Welcome to ACAP Guilford's monthly meeting. We're so glad to have you join us. A little word about what ACAP is in case you don't know. We're a nonprofit organization that offers information, resources, support, and community for those of us who are caring for aging parents. As you can tell from our name, our emphasis is on adult children who are providing support for their parents. However, anyone who's providing caregiving is welcome to be, whether you're here, whether you're friends, family, or professionals. Each of our 9 chapters is located across the Eastern Seaboard, offers monthly programs that address issues related to aging, family dynamics, and adult-child caregiving. Presenters are experts on the topics that they address, and many are or have been caregivers themselves. ACAP Guilford meets on the 3rd Thursday of each month at Senior Resources of Guilford at 1401 Benjamin Parkway. You are welcome to be here. We hope you will be here. We offer lunch at 11:30 and the program begins at 12. Do RSVP if you're going to be here in person. So we are sure to have enough food for everybody. Of course, if you really can't get here, then we live stream. At 12 o'clock, the program begins, so that's the time to hop on. And if you would like to see any of the past programs, we record all of them, and they're available on our YouTube channel. Today, we have a wonderful sponsor, an ongoing sponsor, Griswold Home Care, and its director, Bruce McReynolds, is here to tell you a little bit about what they do.
All right, thank you, Cheryl. So good to be with you. My name is Bruce McReynolds, and I'm the owner of our local Griswold Home Care offices. We provide care in 6 counties across the Triad, with offices in Greensboro and Burlington. So we are a big fan of adult children of aging parents. We've helped support the chapter here locally for several years and really believe in its mission as it aligns so much with the mission of Griswold Home Care. So we're pleased to be able to sponsor tonight's program, and hopefully you're enjoying the lunch this afternoon. So understanding that the need for care can arise urgently, as well as just for those that might be planning for the future, Griswold Home Care stands ready to assist. Our dedication over the past 42 years has been to provide assistance necessary for our clients and their families to remain safe and independent in the comfort of their own homes. We offer a comprehensive range of services tailored to meet the unique needs of each individual, including personal care, homemaking, companionship, respite care, both on an hourly basis, providing respite care, as well as with live-in care. We provide live-in care both on a short-term and long-term basis. We can help with any post-rehabilitation and hospital services. We help with veterans assistance programs and connecting individuals and families to community resources. We understand that finding the right care for your loved one at home can be challenging. At Griswold Home Care, we're excited to introduce a revolutionary step forward in providing around-the-clock assistance and peace of mind with our 24/7 virtual care service. It's in partnership with Cyndee AI, which is a leading provider of artificial intelligence in the home care environment. This state-of-the-art 24/7 virtual care can detect falls, physical distress, calls for help, as well as identifying early signs of cognitive decline, infection, medication errors, and potential urinary tract infection and pneumonia. This empowers Griswold Home Care to intervene early, manage symptoms effectively, and reduce hospitalizations, as well as to enhance the overall experience of our clients. Our approach begins with personalized care developed by a registered nurse, tailored specifically to your family's individual needs and goals. At Griswold Home Care, we believe in making high-quality care affordable and simple. We have no weekly minimum number of hours that are required, no long-term contracts, no upfront cost, and we can assist in connecting you with the resources needed to fund the cost of care. Our commitment to excellence has been recognized with awards such as a Leader in Experience, Provider of Choice, and Employer of Choice in 2024. So again, we're eager to learn a little bit more about your needs, specific needs, and would love to hear from you. If you have a aging parent or family member needing assistance in the home environment. So thanks again for allowing us to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce, again for your continual support of ACAP Guilford. I will tell you that next month, Bruce will be talking about virtual home care. And so put that on your calendar now. That's going to be cutting edge information that will be helpful to you. Today, our program is called From Driver to Passenger, Transitions for Older Adults. Why? Because many adults find that driving is what keeps them engaged and independent. That's how they get to the store, to the doctor's appointments, to work, and to volunteering, and to socializing. But we change over time. The question is, when is it important to think about whether an individual should continue to drive, and who helps make that decision? What do they look at, and what comes next if in fact they need to give up driving? Today we are very fortunate to have Cyndee Crompton of Driver Rehabilitation Service share her expertise and advice. Cyndee Crompton is the founder and owner of Driver Rehabilitation Services, an independently owned business that's located in Greensboro and has several satellites across the state. They serve people all over the state. Cyndee completed her undergraduate degree in Chicago, a master's degree in occupational therapy from Washington University in St. Louis, and specialty certificates in low vision and in driving and community mobility. She's worked in acute care rehabilitation and developed a driver rehabilitation program. She has been involved in several older driver research projects that have been funded by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and has taught at North Carolina universities and also at state and national conferences. Cyndee and her husband Ray have been married 28 years and are trying to enjoy the empty nest phase. But apparently, as she reports, her 3 children, the young birds, keep showing up between their other life activities. Ms. Crompton, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, we're getting closer. So my oldest just got his first job offer this week. So we're getting closer. Okay, I'm going to preface a couple things. I'm a fast talker because I have a lot to tell you. But if I start getting too fast, just tell me to slow down, and then I'll skip some slides because this is a hard topic, and there is a lot on this topic to cover, but also I just start getting really excited about being with you all. So just kind of know that. But I did want to say that, we all have this issue in some way because I'm becoming that adult driver, that aging driver of my soon to be adult children. And I am the daughter of aging parents. So my mother-in-law to the left, we always show up in the same outfit for Christmas. We never plan it. I'm like, another time for our yearly picture. And then my parents on the other picture, who are in Iowa. This is just a picture of our website. So front page, there's a lot of information on there. There's tabs specifically related to aging driver issues. So that's a good place to go. If you pick up our literature, you'll find all that. As it was already mentioned, I am the owner and lead therapist for our company here centrally located, but we have satellite clinics throughout the state. And so we're covering across the state and open to hiring people in other places if the need arises. So I'm not going to read all the long written things. Bruce said that if you want a copy of the handouts after this presentation, that can be sent out. I also had forwarded just a list of links where I got a lot of the information and where I would get in these little rabbit holes, because there's so much out there on the topic of just aging, but that can be sent out. So just make sure that your email gets directed to those folks, and then that can get sent to you guys as well. Okay, so this video that's going to play is 3 different news story snippets that I've kind of pieced together. So it's going to jump around a little bit, but the intent of this is just to help recognize how big of an issue this is nationally, and sort of what makes the news with these stories.
More than 41 million drivers over the age of 65 are on the roads today. Crash injuries sent more than 290,000 older adults to emergency room in 2016. Now an article in the New England Journal of Medicine argues retirement from driving threatens one's health and wellness.
Could taking away the keys of someone who's older be, in a way, detrimental to the health of someone?
It's absolutely detrimental, and that's proven. So it decreases people's ability to get to work, to have fulfilling social lives. Older adults who are socially isolated have huge health risks. It's basically akin to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
It's a difficult situation, to say the least. Realizing someone you love or care about should no longer be driving.
Many seniors are safe drivers, but what happens when that begins to change, Chris?
Tough area. Science shows physical and cognitive decline at older ages can have a big impact on driving ability. Experts say you need to have a plan in place before that happens. 98-year-old Phyllis Baum started driving in 1932.
I know the rules. I don't get on the highway and go slowly.
But 93-year-old Patricia Gambler doesn't drive anymore. Now her daughter Melissa chauffeurs her around. Dr. David Bernstein doesn't take any detours when delving into this discussion.
Oh, it's very serious. I mean, I can't emphasize enough the angst that happens when there's a crisis.
This fiery crash along I-94 in 2015 caused by an 87-year-old driver. His case was sent to the Secretary of State's office to have his license reviewed. That's not a rare occurrence.
There are times where there are car accidents that involve individuals who, once we get to those accident scenes, we see that maybe need to be reviewed in order to continue driving. How is their memory? How are their reaction to situations? How are their mobility? And how are they moving? Hearing, seeing, when you put all of that together, is it safe for them to continue to drive?
Do they get lost on routes they should know? Any new dents or scratches on their vehicle? Have they received a ticket recently or experienced a near miss or crash? Do they take medication that might affect their ability to drive? And if you're unsure, ask yourself, would you want to ride with them?
Would I be comfortable riding as a passenger in that vehicle with, my aging parent or friend or family member? Making sure that you put a plan in place.
Families and children would rather talk about funeral plans and selling a house before they would talk about taking away the keys from their adult drivers.
The conversation can be hard. Experts recommend being sensitive to how you can help an older adult preserve their self-respect. Pick a family member or a friend that the person will hear better than others. Don't be put off by negative reactions. Try to find something positive in how they'll continue to stay connected to things that are important to them.
Mastrianis don't want to give up driving just yet. Have a backup plan for when they put the car in park for good.
When you're going to do something, you get in the car and go. So, but we had a few were around a year ago. We have to ultimately do that.
One of the things Lois and Murray told me, it's humiliating when the children that you first gave car keys to say, Mom and Dad, hand them over.
Okay, if somebody wants to figure out how the volume on everything's as high as it can go on my computer, but I'm not going to spend time. But if you find somebody wants to come up here and find out how to click forward, you can, or click it higher, you can. Okay, so driving independence is huge for really everyone, but with an aging person in particular, it's that sense of freedom and more of a feeling of like entitlement, right? Like I turned 16, I got my license, I need to go. But why are we talking about the aging driver? I mean, isn't driving important for everyone? Well, there's multiple reasons why this has become an increasing topic of conversation, particularly with some of the research projects that I've been involved in with the state. But the biggest point here is the first group of baby boomers turned 65 in 2011. And if you look at this slide, the population of aging has increased from, I'm sorry, tiny bit distracted, 1900 to now by about 20%. So you can see on the graph it was about 5% of the population was 65 in the 1900s, where now it's about 25% of the population. And this also just shows that increase in growth, a rapidly increasing number of folks that are moving into that aging population as compared to the general population. So we're talking percentages of aging compared to the general population. And 16.8% or 55.8 million people were in that population range in 2020. And so what about North Carolina? Well, we're right there with them. So to 16.7%, same number. So we're seeing the same kind of, issue with the population in North Carolina, as well as the just population in general throughout the nation. But also we have a lot of rural counties. So you saw my parents, they're in rural Iowa. So there is not Uber, there is not Lyft. There is a brother right now, but he's not sure how long he really wants to stay there. So, it is such a hard issue. Like, I'm not here to tell you some magic answers as much as to offer some steps and compassion and understanding and tell you that this is across the board a huge national issue that we're having lots of stakeholder conversations about. So I thought this was just cute because I still have a little girl inside of me, and I'm probably on the second to the tallest little thing in there. But it happens so fast. All of a sudden we're moving up in our age range, and we have to think about what's next. But this slide really talks about who's holding licenses at what age. And I think this is helpful to look at because 70 to 84, 89% of people in that age range have a license. They're licensed drivers. 85 and older, 69%. So the question is, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but we want people driving. It's not that we don't, but we also know that there are increasing risks as we age. And so those numbers are high, and we need to be mindful of that. So here, 44 million older adults will hold licenses in 2030. So the good news is the crash rates are decreasing with our aging drivers. So anybody have thoughts on why that might be? Because this is kind of new. So maybe that can help match your thoughts. It has been that crash rates increased and we're consistently increasing, but now we're beginning to see a downward trend in crash rates. Any thoughts?
Maybe Uber, maybe COVID. More alerts in the car.
Yeah, technology is a big part of it. And I was just backing into a parking space here, and my car threw on my brakes. I'm like, no, I have another foot to go. I'm watching this. But it was like, brake. I do think that technology features are helping to avoid crashes or to minimize the severity of the crash. But what we do know, and this is what it shows here, is that when there is a crash involved, so if you look at the driver, the rate at this age group, so like 70 to 80 plus of a fatality goes exponentially high. So if we have our 16-year-olds crashing, the death rates are in 100 million miles driven. So, it's our young people and our old people are crashing, but our young people are surviving it better. So thoughts on that? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, for one thing, older people are more delicate. So when they're hurt, they can be hurt more severely.
Yeah, so the frailty of those injuries just don't have the same bounce back that we had when we were on the lower little pedestal of our ladder to aging. But it's a significant contributor to why individuals that are having a crash are not surviving the crashes. So I felt like this was a good slide because this came from National Highway Traffic Safety. 81-year-old woman who was driving this car had a minor bump up, like this is the damage, so not much, and had multiple fractures to her spine and foot. Serious injury over a pretty small bump up. So, you know, what happens even in a minor situation with an aging person who is frail can have a significant impact. And then we know once you go into hospitalization and like those can just start the downward spiral that we want to avoid. So not only do we want people safe on the road, we just want to avoid the bump ups because of what they can contribute, the domino effect to that. So where are aging drivers more likely to crash? These are the 4 most common scenarios. So left turns, monitoring cross traffic, having to attend to information in all directions, changing lanes or merging. So there's where I think technology, our little beeping blind spot indicator helps. Rearing collisions, and that's more reaction time. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then novel situations. So, you know, more and more roundabouts are being put in our on our roadways, and that helps keep traffic flowing, and it offers a solution for congestion, but it can be difficult with an aging person. I spoke last week for our nurse case reviewers for the state DMV, and one of them was saying that she was behind a car that just went the wrong way around a roundabout. I'm like, oh no, don't tell me. And, you know, so the challenge of those situations can be really risky. And Pinehurst, that area has a lot of them, and they have a big population of aging drivers. And then they don't just have a roundabout, they have the dual lane roundabout. So, you know, they get more and more complex, and there's a lot of things to need to navigate those situations successfully. So this is just talking a little bit more about drivers in their 70s begin showing some increased risk of error at intersections, and those in their 80s were clearly having problems. So in the 60s, so yeah, I'm still okay right now, but are more like those in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. But just that gap management. So is it safe to go, and how fast do I need to go in relationship to the cars that are traveling? So we work with, my business works with drivers across the lifespan, and we see a lot of new drivers with autism or learning disabilities, and this is very hard for them to learn, that gap management. And there's sort of a parallel in those diagnoses with the aging and some of the same struggles. So how about in North Carolina? So almost 40,000 of the intersection crashes were happening with no traffic control device whatsoever. So hopefully you've heard, like, if you can get out with a traffic light, you should do that. So find your traffic light. If you're in your Walmart and there's 4 exits, but one of them has a traffic light, that's the best solution, is to go to the traffic light that's going to stop opposing traffic and give you the right of way. So again, it's the judgments, it's the fast decision making, where, you know, it's the guy blowing the horn behind you that puts pressure on you to make a decision that isn't going to match skill. So we want to, whenever we can, go into a light controlled. Second was stop and go signals or stop signs. And then the third was standard stop signs. So we know that crashes are usually the result of a driver error. So even though we don't like to admit that, it's usually something that the driver has done wrong. And there's lots of reasons. I don't need to read all of those, but we are wanting to maximize people's skill level so those driver errors don't happen. And this just is a touch on, I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but some of the aging driver research that I've been involved in. I've written, I don't know, hundreds of people scoring driving behaviors, but it's because NHTSA has an initiative to keep aging drivers on the road as long as possible, as safe as possible. Because we know that when anybody's driving, you're contributing to your family, you're contributing to your own well-being, you're getting to your medical appointments, you're happier, and you're putting money into the economy. I mean, there's so many great reasons to keep people safely on the road. But again, if we're not safe and there's a bump up, the death rate is higher, or the result of it becoming a negative downward spiral increases. So there's a lot of things that also contribute to our aging drivers' challenges. So, you know, not only the cars have changed, we're changing physically, but the roadways have changed. So I've already touched on that a lot. And I think often about our new drivers, kind of related to this, that, you know, there's a lot of talk about autonomous driving and we're not going to have to drive, and this is a hot topic at conferences that I go to. But my concern is, in the event that the driver needs to take over control of that vehicle, it's your worst case scenario when your technology fails you because it becomes too complex and something's going on. And then you have somebody who's relied on, you know, an autonomous vehicle driving for them that's supposed to use their highest level thinking skills to evade a situation. So these are just, every way you look at this issue, it's just complex because, you know, we would love to say like, oh, well, just hang on, autonomous driving is coming. But there's a lot of issues that are wrapped around that topic as well. And so these are just ways we change. Our vision changes. If we live long enough, all of us are going to get cataracts, reflexes change, memory, attention, general health, stamina, well-being, and then also increased medication. So how do all those things potentially play in, and what can you do to be safe? Like, how do we think proactively? And Kathy was saying that, like, I want to know how I'm going to keep aging well, and thinking about what does that look like for me? And really, it's the same answer that you get. What's heart healthy? What's eye healthy? What's healthy? All of those things also apply for driving. So, you know, exercising, keeping mental alertness, engaging in activities that stimulate your brain. I'll tell, you know, meet with folks that say, oh, I do crossword puzzles. I'm like, put a timer to it. So don't leisurely do a crossword puzzle. See how fast you can do it. Because in driving, you're making quick and fast decisions. And it's really easy to just kind of slow down and then be in a situation that demands a fast response. And that skill hasn't really been practiced. So looking at medications, having yearly eye appointments, drive when the weather's good. If there is a cataract, low contrast situations are going to be worse. So cloudy, rainy weather, things like that. Familiar routes is helpful. It's not the only answer, but helpful. Extra distance for that reaction time. We talked about the rear end collision being one of the primary causes of accidents for aging drivers. So put a bubble around your car, a little space bubble, and keep it there, because that's going to help give just a moment of extra time. And then distractions. Try to, you know, don't have a fight with your spouse in the car. It's going to throw your attention off. Don't, you know, sometimes even your favorite music. Just really keep your attention on the roadway. And sometimes, and I do this too, if there's a complex situation, I'll be like, okay, got to watch that car leaving. And just kind of, I talk about what's happening in front of me, so I know I'm staying engaged in the task of driving. And then, are there alternatives? You know, and this is a tough one. We'll also touch on that, but sometimes there's not good alternatives. This is just talking about positioning, so physical things. So a wedge cushion, I have 3 different examples, but this is my favorite one. So Amazon, but this is a smaller one if you just need a little bit at the dip of your seat. And this one is not as good, Walmart. But these, why are these helpful? Well, because what happens, our cars are designed to sink back. So in an event of a crash, the engineers, which is smart for safety, have designed it so the seat pulls us back in to the seat and protects us as the potentiometer of the seatbelt tightens. But what happens is your eyes are over your butt. So you're sitting there and your eyes are lower. So if we raise up the back part of the seat and level out, it increases eye height. So why not just a big, take a sofa cushion and put it there? Well, because then you don't have knee clearance. So we need to be able to have the steering wheel be able to freely turn, but get eye height where it's sufficient to see. So simple things like a wedge cushion can be helpful, because if reaction time is a tiny bit slower, we want to see it really good and as much advanced as we can. So just those little aids that can prove beneficial. Okay, I'm going to show you this. This is also a snippet from this website on planning ahead. So we all plan, or I think we do, for our retirement. And I tell people like, hey, if you're aging and fired from a job, that feels really hard. You know, like, darn it, like I've worked here all my life and now I'm getting fired. But if you retire, they throw you a party. So you plan your retirement, you think about it, and this becomes harder for driving because we don't want to think about like, oh, I'm gonna have a party that I'm no longer driving. But in the same thought way, it's really hard when it's snatched from you and you don't feel like you've had a choice in it. So this whole website addresses this issue, but this is just pieces of a video.
Our generation, we were rebels. Oh, how we loved our cars. They were fast and loud. And we went wherever the wind blew us. The key is to stay one step ahead on this journey. Plan for retirement.
Live large and check those things off your bucket list. Be safe, but don't play it too safe.
And know when to take the high road. When to leave the driving to someone else.
I prefer to have a driver anyway.
There are more options now than ever before.
So just like you plan for retirement to live the life you want, having a transportation plan can help you get to the places that help you live that life you want. Fatal car crash rates can increase for those over 75. And even a fender bender could cause a disabling injury given aging bones and increased frailty. So give some thought to when you're ready to turn over your keys for your own safety and for the safety of others.
So create a transportation plan like I do.
See how to make your transportation plan at planfortheroadahead.org.
Okay, what's your feedback on that video? Okay, I'm gonna give you mine then. My parents aren't jumping on a trampoline.
Right.
And they are not boogieing on a bus, and they're not upside down doing skydiving, nor do they have any interest. But no one that comes to me looks like that.
It's more the well elderly crowd.
Yeah, but even if, you know, I know well elderly that nobody in our Wednesday night church group, awesome, inspiring. But I just think it's harder than this. And this does have some good information about planning and thinking about it. But, you know, we have all these, it's just so complex. And so like, there's a piece of me that loves it because it's inspirational and it's happy and it feels good. And I do think that is important to have some of that empowerment. But then I also think, how do we match reality? And how do we think about, you know, our rural aging drivers that don't have a transportation plan, doesn't fit their environment. So it just is tough. Okay, we've talked about a lot of this. This one is on one of the links. This is actually from Australia. And so some of the word, like the cities or things they use in it is a little different. But I really like this brochure because it just simplifies some basic questions like, I'm going to continue driving with no change. I could stop driving now. I could drive less. Or I'm going to stop driving later. So it's sort of like, okay, here's 4 things to think about. Where are you on that thought process? And then what does a person need to make the decision? So support, like, you know, we process and we talk through our financial plans and our retirement plans and our, you know, Memorial Day plans, whatever. We have support. We think through that with people, gaining knowledge, you know. So again, what is the options? What are the options in the environment that you live? Is a family member an option? Is a church member an option? Is the local senior center offer rideshare options? So what's out there within the context of where you're living? And then what are your values? So I will tell people all the time, like, listen, driving doesn't define anybody's worth. It is really helpful, but your worth as a human being and your ability to be a valued person is not defined by whether you drive or not. And so being able to kind of separate that just from an own personal value, and then, you know, the value of getting to your grandkids' activities or visiting with friends or going to a card game, things like that. You know, is it possible to say, hey, I wish our card game could be over, you know, the afternoon hours instead of evening, because driving at night is not in my best interest anymore. And to be honest with those values and what does it look like to redefine how things work. And then, you know, what's the certainties? So, if I don't drive, I'm gonna for sure need transportation to medical appointments. I'm going to have to plan my grocery shopping better. I'm going to, so what are some of those certainties? But then what are the risks as well? So when I first started in this profession many, many years ago, I was at a national conference where they were telling a story from the perspective of a 12-year-old whose father was an emergency room physician and had been called in on an emergency surgery. And on the way there, he was T-boned by an aging driver whose family had taken out a $2 million policy on her because she had had multiple injury or crashes before, and he was killed. And she said, my dad was on the way to save somebody's life, and not only did they not get their life saved, but I don't have a dad. And so there are certainties, potential certainties of risks. Someone with a memory problem, do you want them in a lawsuit when they have their sunset years and can't really remember what happened? So those are, I'm not trying to use scare tactics. I know those situations, but they're hard. They're hard to process. They're hard to think about. We want to, not have that be our story, but it could be. And so just kind of thinking through those. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about where my business comes in, what we do as occupational therapists in this field, if there is still concern. So these are the things that are showing that there's maybe concern when there's someone drives too slow or they have difficulties in a lot of the environments that we've already discussed, the intersections and the novel situations, changing lanes, confusing their lefts and rights, becoming lost. One of the initiatives several years ago that we were working on in North Carolina is to make sure that aging people got ticketed if there was a problem, because there was no way to track, growing concerns prior to something major happening. And so it's really easy for law enforcement to be like, oh, I don't want them to feel bad, and this is like my grandpa, and but there is, the law enforcement ticketing is helping identify potential concerns that are happening. And if there's multiple times that that's happening, that's a warning sign, a clear warning sign that we need to be watching for. So if those situations, all the things we've talked about, there still remains a question, then sometimes a driver evaluation is what's recommended. And we actually receive a lot of our referrals through the state as well that are asking this question regarding licensing. So here's just a video of kind of where some of our referrals come from.
Dr. Keith Lewis, correct. Oftentimes there's a discrepancy with the patient tells you what the family tells you, and it creates strife between the family members. And having a driving evaluation helps the physician get a more objective view of what they're actually capable of doing on the road. And helps you officially make a recommendation to the patient whether they should or should not be driving.
Oh, I'm Dr. Carmen Dormeyer. I'm a neurologist here at Guilford County. It helps to have a more objective set of data to make a decision, such as a driving restriction or even no driving at all, and that it has not to be the family or the family member that appears to be policing. I think for the doctor-patient relationship, it is nicer to have, an objective set of data and say, you have to look at this and you have to understand that you could not just harm yourself, but you can harm others.
Two major issues that I see. One is the patients with memory loss who would almost never say that they feel like they shouldn't drive. It's usually someone else that brings them into the office and is concerned about their abilities to drive. I like to refer them because I feel like the question can be answered better with an objective evaluation. The other issue is the patients who have motor skill problems. And this is a lot of times seen with Parkinson's disease. Many times their difficulties are not so much memory as their motor skill problems, I found. They have a lot of difficulty using their hands and their feet and their hand-eye coordination. And usually I can pretty much convince them not to drive. It's the patients who have the memory loss that have more difficulty.
Department of Motor Vehicles said that you needed to have this done today.
Yes, ma'am. Only thing I believe is because I was coming from Pinehurst and stopped right down there, and when the light turned green, I pulled off. So I looked to my right, and here comes this car down that little road. That car was running so fast, and I said, because I looked around going north. So Trooper said, "Did you stop?" I said, "No, I kept going." but I couldn't get away from. She slammed ready to.
During a time the other day, I am in great hopes that you'll be able to notify the DMV site competent to drive a motor vehicle in the state of North Carolina.
Well, because I'm having a birthday next month and I'm a senior citizen, I just wanted to be sure that I knew that I was competent to drive.
How old are you turning?
90.
90. So good for you. And you're living alone and getting about life fine. So good for you that you're being proactive and really addressing issues that typically need to be addressed as you get older. So.
And because I don't know, I can't check my own reflexes and things like that. And I wanted to have a test of some kind, driver's test. And I told my doctor that I was going to ask when I got my license renewed, which is next month, if they would give me a driver's test. And he said, oh, you could have that done.
So she did great at 90. I saw her again at 95, and it was time to put in place a retirement from driving plan. But she self-initiated both of those referrals. Okay, I want to talk briefly about DMV Medical Review Unit. This is the kind of boring stuff, but important stuff, because DMV is a licensing agency. So we are not. We work closely with them, and often they are requesting a driver evaluation by an occupational therapist. And so that happens maybe when a person goes in to renew their license and there's some concern in the interaction with the senior examiner, maybe because they've been filed. We'll hit on that in just a second. But they're overseeing the licensing, the licensed drivers in the state of North Carolina. So this is just talking a little bit, sometimes a physician's going to request it. Sometimes the DMV is going to ask the physician to complete medical paperwork. And here is the packet of DMV medical paperwork that a physician's I can pass it around, being asked to fill out. So it's about 12 pages that the DMV will request if someone is at risk. Sometimes the physician says, oh, I got this paperwork. I want an OT evaluation to know how to answer some of these questions. So maybe if this goes to the physician, they come to us before we give them information for them to submit it back. Sometimes they submit it directly back, DMV reviews it, and they say, okay, we want a driver evaluation because this tells us medical things, but it doesn't tell us functional. How does the person actually perform behind the wheel? So there's a lot of kind of different ways that can go, but that is part of what happens. Ultimately, the DMV is who recommends license revocation or restrictions, whatever is appropriate. A person that's had, so maybe a fall and a seizure should not be driving until cleared by a physician. The state law says they need to be seizure-free for 6 months. So I've had someone come to me before and they weren't seizure-free 6 months. And I'm like, oh, you've driven a long way to get for this evaluation and I can't legally test you because we need to clear that window and have a physician sign off. Sometimes people have had a fall or injury or a stroke, and in that event, their license has expired. So just having knowledge that this is now they're maybe returning to driving with some new deficits, that the DMV medical review and potentially driver evaluation will be needed. And then the last one is this is the words around it, but that there is state law that says a physician or clinician will not be held legally responsible, that there's immunity for helping to keep our roadways safe. So we're not trying to tattletale, we're just trying to help keep our roadways safe for all the other roadway users that are out there and for the person, of course. This goes on and talks about, this is why if you want this much detail, just get a copy of my handouts. And then you'll have that written there, and you can also look it up, it's online. But if there is someone reporting, this is so if you're concerned about an aging person, you can report. This is the online form you can get. Anybody can report anybody, but it's not anonymous. So you have to let it be known, and the person that had their name reported has the right to request that information back. So, you know, sometimes this leads to some strife among people. When we're seeing someone and we need to make recommendations that impact their driving restrictions or privileges, they sign a release for us that they know that before they even come, that's part of what we'll do. If we're adding like a special hand controls, say somebody came with bilateral amputations and they're using adaptive equipment, we need that restriction. We'll fill out this, we'll send that to the physician as well. So, so this is, I just touched on it, the medical review form, and that anyone can report. Law enforcement, if someone gets pulled over, that I mentioned earlier, we had an initiative several years back about, you know, ticket seniors, because that's information that they need to know for their safety and others' safety. But a lot of times a paper, the form that I can't remember the number, but the police fills out, goes then to medical, that then initiates the same process. So where these come from. But ultimately, the burden of proof of capability lies on the driver. So if there's been filings and there is a revocation recommendation by DMV Medical and the person says, I don't agree with that, then it's the burden of proof is on the person. And so how does that happen? Well, there's medical hearings where a person can go before a medical physician and DMV nurse case reviewer and under the commissioner to have a face-to-face, basically mini courtroom, so to speak. It's a lot nicer than that, I think, but you know, where there's discussion and possibly some testing with the physician to look at driver safety. Sometimes we've had people come to us and say, well, I want to appeal this, but I want to have you do the eval first because I want to understand. And so we want people to understand, where do your limitations lie? Where are your skills, and how do we help you navigate this very difficult topic? So, you know, ways that people can improve. There's community-based programs, sometimes AARP, driving improvements, driving schools. Then there's medically based ones where maybe the healthcare professional is asking questions at an exam. And then we're kind of the third tier where we're doing more of a comprehensive assessment. So when we're working with an aging driver, it's typically a 3 to 4 hour process. Olivia had one recently that it was 6 hours because they needed to take breaks. And so she's like, we just took breaks. It took the whole day, but we got through it. So, and then driver rehab specialists, this is kind of the boring stuff. Anyway, we have specialized training. Most of us are occupational therapists. I've done certifications that you already mentioned earlier. That's just another cute picture of my team. And this is what's the fee schedule. So this is our cost, and it depends. Private pay is the lesser cost. If I'm doing someone who's which doesn't probably apply to anybody here, but a wheelchair driver in a high-tech van with more equipment, that's when the costs are changing, the cost structure. So we have a variety of services all the way from an initial evaluation, training if someone needs it, more to our novice drivers, all the way kind of through different populations. Okay, and then at the end of our evaluation is a detailed report. So this is anywhere from a 4 to 15-page report, depending what's going on. It gets more complicated when we're recommending vehicles and adaptive equipment and multiple choices for vehicles and things like that. But where we want to speak to all audiences that are involved, so the person, the family member, the physician, the DMV medical review, the payer source, vehicle modifier if they're involved. So there's a lot of audiences that our report is speaking to, and we spend a lot of time making sure that that's as comprehensive as it can be. I like her, but we only have like 10 minutes, right? So I'm going to skip this video because I really want to get to some others. But a good driver evaluation that meets best practice guidelines is both a clinical and behind the wheel assessment. So there are driving schools that will go drive with you around the block or maybe for an hour downtown. There are other hospital-based facilities that will do paper pencil testing. I firmly believe as occupational therapists that we look at functional tests. And that if you tell someone they shouldn't drive and you've never watched them drive, that's not fair. And if you tell somebody they can drive and you've never watched them drive and they have something serious happen, that there's a big risk there that we maybe miss something. So these are hard because, you know, there's any of us could have a crash. I can leave today and have a crash, and there's human error when it relates to driving. So kind of best practice says that the gold standard is both the clinical and behind the wheel, with behind the wheel being the ultimate gold standard of performance. So part of why I think it's really important that an occupational therapist does this is someone with a medical background, because instead of showing you, then I'm going to tell you a story. Because we need to evaluate, not cue. So I had an aging driver who I was seeing, and I did some things wrong in this story. So one of the things I did wrong is that he said, well, I'm going to fail because you're going to be in your car where I have all my safety features. And so I could tell he was going to be a little rambunctious about that issue. So I'm like, okay, we'll go in your car. Okay, big mistake, number one. So biggest mistake of this whole story. So I'm trying to help him because I wanted him to fully understand, like there were a lot of underlying issues. So I'm asking him to turn left out of like a strip mall where there was no protected lights. So I already told you if you can find lights, that's good. Well, he pulls out a little bit. Is it clear? I don't know. You're the driver. You got to make the decision. How about now? So, you know, we begin to occlude the traffic. And so then finally he, goes. I'm like, okay, that's all right. People stop for us. Well, then he's driving significantly below the speed limit, which we identified as one of the problem areas. So I said, hey, what's the speed limit? Oh, it's, 45. I'm like, okay, well, what are you traveling? Oh, like 25, 30. I'm like, yeah, let's try to keep up this speed. Well, that's no problem. So then the light turns yellow, and we're like the fourth car, and he just is going. And so normally I would hover my foot over my trainer brake, be prepared to stop. I didn't have a trainer brake. So all I had is my voice. So I'm like, you need to start slowing down, slow down. So by the end, I'm screaming, stop. Okay, so it was clear that he shouldn't be driving, not even from those stories, like even if he was in my car. But the reason I'm telling you this is because I get a call about 2 months later from the physician saying, will you retest him because he's gone to the local driving school and they said he's a great driver. And I said, right, because they didn't evaluate him. They prompted him. Hey, lights turning yellow, better slow down. Okay, he follows that direction. Oh, it's clear, go ahead and pull out. Okay, he pulls out, fine. Like the issue was in putting this thinking behind the driving maneuvers. And so I do think you got to be careful who you choose. And I said, no, I'm not going to retest because I know he should not be driving. And it's a waste of his time. And you as a physician can decide, whoops, there's my necklace, which professional you want to listen to. But that's why we do follow best practice standards, except you should be in the trainer car, not his car. Okay, so physical challenges we've kind of talked about. Reaction time, when I'm going to show, I'll talk over this a little bit, but nope. When I'm seeing someone with dementia, they get very confused on this test. So just see your right foot only, okay? So, no, I want you to do it just like you would if you're driving a car, okay? Yeah, okay, go back to the gas. When you step on the gas, the green light comes on. As soon as you see the red light, hit the brake as fast as you can. Emergency stop. This isn't if there's an emergency, if you have to slam on the brakes. Okay, so as soon as you see red, I want you to go very, very quickly. Okay? Not with your left foot though. So trying to drive I'll ask him, are you a 2-footed driver? But if she says, no, I drive with my right foot, then we're going to test that way. Okay, I'm told I have 5 minutes. So I want you to see some drivers that are struggling. I really thought I was better than this on this. This is all really great stuff. She's great too, but you can get these. So here are some behind the wheel evaluations. And you'll see good and challenge. Nope. signals and all that good stuff, or just normal? Do you like to drive?
Yes, I like to drive. I've always had to drive quite a bit in my work.
I'm distracting you a little bit. Good. So you're routing us a little bit to make a more efficient route.
Yeah.
Good for you.
We have to go a little further this way.
Speed looks good. Your lane position looks good. You've been checking your mirrors and watching for traffic, which is very, very important.
Okay, you're off. Stay on your side.
And let's turn right at this traffic light. There's the Piggly Wiggly on our right.
Piggly Wiggly on the right. Yeah, you really want to go in there?
Yes.
Right here.
Yes. Turn, you're going to run into this car. Okay, hang on. You got to turn the wheel because you got a car here. And you got. Okay, now straighten out. There you go, good. So that was risky because you weren't turning the wheel and you're going to hit that car. Okay, so why are we, I can't show you this, but does memory affect driver safety? Yes. This video shows someone who cannot remember any place we've been, and it's heartbreaking. It's here in Greensboro. I wish I could play it, but I do want you to see this one. So this is why when there's a difficult conversation needed.
In the cognitive decisions was the area of greatest concern, which is what we saw in here as well. And can you tell Cyndee what happened at the end of your intersection when we were getting ready to turn onto Southeast School Road?
Yeah.
Do you remember that? No, we just stopped. We were there for 4 minutes with me, I didn't queue.
Right.
Is that the same deficits that you scored in the severe impairment range here that we looked at are also severely impaired behind the wheel. So I'm seeing consistency in your impairment, which puts you at too great of a risk to remain a driver. The other thing is we forgot one of our destinations. So, just your memory, and you even told me when we started today that sometimes you forget where you're going when you're out on a trip. But our goal is to maintain your safety and public safety. Because the wrong answer would be waiting till a crash happened.
We don't want that. And, he's so used to going when he wants to go there.
Right.
I just can't pick up and go.
Any questions? It's not the news you want to hear, is it?
The findings.
Oh, great.
I do know. The decision's not something they reach easily. I mean, that's why we had all that testing. Yeah.
It is a loss. It's a loss to grieve. It's a loss to have to figure out how life works without that license. And, it's a natural response to feel disappointed, angry, saddened.
None of us want to give up that independence, and it comes sooner or later. Sometimes sooner than we want.
Yeah. I thought it was okay.
Well,
getting on the lines one time, 2 or 3 times.
Well, I jotted down some notes, but I just want to say, our job is to help you be as safe as possible. And when we were doing some of our testing today, we had a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
Some of that mental processing, and you have to have that mental processing to be able to drive.
I won't be here much longer anyway, so it's fine and dandy. Something going down over there.
You can get through this. You know?
Go
Huh?
on, go on.
Yes, you will.
Huh?
Yes, you will.
First time you leave, it's gone. I'll be gone.
Let me ask you this. Could you live with yourself if you were driving and with your disease, your brain is not working correctly? Could you live with yourself if you killed somebody's children or killed one of our grandkids? Could you live with that? It's something that's out of your hands at this point. It's the disease that you have. It's just your brain.
I'll take care of that when you go to work.
Okay, I'm not gonna look your way because I know you're telling me I've got to be done. I have one video I want to show you, but I also want to say about that was a little bit too wordy for a wrap up with the dementia client, but I've kept it in here because it shows the impact and the emotion around it. And so we try to make that a little more succinct, but because they were allowing us to videotape and there was a lot of things happening, I left it in there. But sometimes we don't want to leave you on a bad note. So 30 seconds.
You know, there will be a time when you'll need to stop driving. And so you need to start thinking about that now. It might be 6 months from now. It might be 5 years from now.
Well, if I have to stop driving, I don't work, so I can go to one of these places.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But, you know, just today, I'm saying you can drive with the restrictions. But there will be a time when you'll need to stop driving. Okay.
I know that.
And it's a hard transition. So I tell people to think about it now because it'll ease the transition. Yes.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
I've heard.
Okay, so I'm happy to hang out a little bit and answer any questions. I was told, and I failed to do it, that I needed to keep 10 minutes for follow-up, but I think we started 10 minutes late, just to say. Anyway, so, but if you have questions, feel free to talk to me. If you need to leave, feel free to go. What I would just say is try to empower yourself, look at the literature, think ahead about this issue because it is hard. It's very, very hard. Okay, thank you.
I feel really touched and informed at the same time. We've learned an awful lot about how to think about driving in terms of our loved one's capability, what we do next, and there are lots more questions and lots more material. So we're going to ask Cyndee to come back again to talk to us more. In the meantime, thank you so much, Cyndee, for being with us today. I also want to thank Griswold Home Care one more time and remind you for being our sponsors today and remind you that Bruce McReynolds with Griswold will be speaking next month on Thursday, June 20th at 11:30 for lunch and 12 o'clock for the program. And he'll be talking about technology to keep our loved ones safe. A very important topic and a very interesting topic because so much of it is cutting edge, new stuff that we need to know about. Remember, we'd love to have you here in the building for lunch. Do please RSVP by going to acapcommunity.org. And if you'd like to be notified regularly about our programs, go onto Facebook, our Facebook page, and if you like us in that site, we'll be able to get in touch with you every month. Thank you so much for being here today. I look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for your